everybody's here, I wanted to say greetings to you all. Hopefully we will be in person soon. I'm Nina Carlson with Northwest Natural and president currently of Clackamas County Business Alliance, and we thank you for joining us today. We have with us Vahid Brown, the Supporting Housing Services Program Manager for Clackamas County, and Devin Ellen, Housing Development Manager, and they're here to give us kind of the upshot of how Clackamas County is working with homeless services and housing bonds. So with that, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to being in person, and take it away.
Thanks so much, Nina.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so good afternoon. I'm Devin Ellen. I'm the Housing Development Manager with the Housing Authority of Clackamas County, and I'm joined today by Vahid Brown, our Supportive Housing Services Program Manager. And we're here to talk about some of the programs and initiatives that are underway at the Housing Authority to help address the housing crisis in Clackamas County. In particular, the two metro measures that are currently underway. Let's see here. So before I dive into that, I just want to give a brief overview of what we do at the Housing Authority. So we've been around, we're the oldest housing authority in the state, and we've been providing affordable and safe housing opportunities for Clackamas County residents for over 80 years. And our work consists of much more than the Metro Bond and Supportive Housing Services Program. It includes public housing. We own and operate 445 units of public housing, which are single-family homes and duplexes rented to low-income households with rents that don't exceed 30% of their income. We also own and operate affordable housing with reduced rents below market. And examples of these are low-income housing tax credit developments like Easton Ridge Apartments, the newly remodeled Hillside Manor. In addition, all of our Metro Bond projects include the low-income housing tax credit equity. We also run rental assistance programs. You may have heard of Section 8 vouchers. So this allows low-income households to rent from private market landlords with a rental subsidy, making it affordable. We also have a resident services team that delivers food, holds vaccination clinics, and offers connections to services for our public housing residents. We have an operations, asset management, and finance team. And then the two Metro Bond or Metro initiatives that Vahid and I will talk about next. So let's see. So my department oversees the administration of the county's Affordable Housing Bond Program, also known as the Metro Bond Program. As you know, the nearly $653 million bond measure was approved by voters at the end of 2018, and each county contributes a different percentage of property taxes based on how many counties' homes fall within the boundary. So that means approximately 45% of the homes created through the bond will be in Multnomah County, 34% in Washington County, and 21% in Clackamas County. And unlike the other two counties, all the bond revenues dedicated to Clackamas County, which are roughly $160 million, run through the Housing Authority because our county does not have any entitlement cities, which are cities with a population of over 50,000 residents. So let's see. Here are some of the production goals that Clackamas County identified for the housing bond. Our goal is to create housing for over 200,500 county residents and developing approximately 812 units. We released a bond solicitation in early 2020 and awarded roughly 43 million to 3 projects for a total of 414 units. 2 of those are in construction now, and 1 is slated to close next month. So we're really excited to see those developments, getting out of the ground. We're also aiming to release a second funding solicitation this summer with the hope to make approximately 20 million available to support up to 200 additional units. Okay, so this is our affordable housing pipeline in Clackamas County. To date, we've awarded approximately 48 million or 44% of our total bond allocation to support 5 projects. This includes our phase 1 project known as Tukwila Springs in Gladstone and Merrillhurst Apartments in Lake Oswego. With 44% awarded, we're tracking towards 69% of our total production goal with 561 units underway. So we're really excited about that. Of those 561 units, 246 are reserved for households with incomes at 30% of the area median income. So those are considered extremely low income households. And 375 are family size units, so 2 bedrooms and above, which brings us to 93% of our total production goal for the bond. So if you take a look at our pipeline, the blue shaded projects are utilizing Metro bond funding. So you can see that we have a lot of projects underway. Rosewood Station in unincorporated Clackamas County was finished in 2021. That included 212 units. Clayton Moore Commons in Oregon City, completed in 2020, includes 24 units dedicated to veterans and their families. Our Hillside Manor redevelopment project was completed last September and includes 100 renovated units. Tukwila Springs in Gladstone is a 48-unit permanent supportive housing development, which is scheduled to open this July. Fuller Road Station in unincorporated Clackamas County is scheduled to open in August. That's 100 units of transit-oriented development. Good Shepherd Village in Happy Valley just broke ground last month. That's 143 units. And Maple Apartments, 171 units in Oregon City, is scheduled to start construction next month. Merrillhurst Commons in Lake Oswego is 100 units of family housing scheduled to start construction in August. And Malala Apartments is 60 units in Malala, slated to start construction this summer. So we have 2 other projects in pre-development, both of which Boone's Ferry and Hillside Park. They've both completed significant land use progress and rezoning. So we're looking forward to getting those projects awarded and off the ground in the next year. And I've already alluded to the second bond solicitation this summer. So I think, as a whole, we're really on track to exceed our goal of 812 units. When I project out, we're looking at, almost 1,100 units in total. And so I will pass it on to Vahid to talk about the Supportive Housing Services Program, and then maybe we can take questions at the end.
Sounds good. Thanks, Devin. Hi, everybody. I'm Vahid Brown, the Supportive Housing Services Program Manager for the Housing Authority of Clackamas County, and I'm going to talk about the Supportive Housing Services measure and the implementation of the programs funded by that measure. Next slide. So the Supportive Housing Services Program is funded by a measure passed by the voters in 2020 that is 2 taxes, a tax on high income earners and a tax on businesses that gross over $5 million in the metro area. and it funds the region-wide supportive housing services program implemented by the 3 counties. Like the bond, Clackamas County receives 21.3% of the revenue overall. We began our local implementation plan development we began the development of that in the fall of 2020, and it took 9 months of engagement and planning work. We completed the plan in spring of 2021, and disbursements from Metro began in July of 2021. The resources from the measure are quite significant in terms of homeless services and the response in our region. The 21.3% of Clackamas County's share of that revenue in the current fiscal year is projected by Metro to amount to over $32 million, potentially over $40 million in future years of the collection of this revenue. And to put that in kind of comparison or scale with what we've been working with in the county historically, prior to the passage of this measure, Clackamas County has had $8 million a year total in federal, state, and local funds that we have dedicated to our homeless response efforts. So we're going from a baseline where annually we would be working with $8 million of funding to support helping folks experiencing homelessness get off the streets and into housing, to an environment where we would be working with $40 to $50 million a year, a 5-fold increase of resources. So this is a systemic change scale of revenue that is really making a big difference in the region and in Clackamas County. The supportive housing services funds are flexible. They're meant to be used for really whatever it takes to address the needs of people experiencing homelessness and get them into permanent, stable housing. So this is the kind of the broad list of eligible uses of the funds. Supportive housing services is itself a broad term, and it usually refers to the services provided to people in housing that assist them overcome the barriers they're experiencing to remaining housed, help them retain their housing, address ongoing needs that could be health needs or behavioral health needs, employment needs, getting connected to benefits like Social Security income. So those are the supportive services, the wraparound supports that help folks that are who are previously homeless and are now in housing remain successful in their housing. There's also a regional long-term rent assistance program that's funded by the Supportive Housing Services Measure. This is a lot like a housing voucher, somewhat like, you might be familiar with Section 8 or the Housing Choice Voucher by the federal program, the HUD program. This is a regional program being implemented in all 3 counties, funded by the Supportive Housing Services Measure. It's more flexible than HUD vouchers. It has a higher payment standard, and we're finding that it's working very well with the folks that we're working with to get them into housing, and connected with housing in the open market and with apartments and so forth. We also have a short-term rent assistance program, and we'll be expanding this. This is focused on rapid rehousing and preventing folks from returning to homelessness. So folks that may need a shallow subsidy or a brief period of time of support to get into housing or to maintain their housing. Housing navigation and placement services. This is caseworkers and providers that we contract with that work directly with people experiencing homelessness who have received a voucher, like a regional long-term rent assistance voucher, help them find an apartment, address the barriers they may have to leasing up an apartment. They might have no identification or no social security card. They might have no income. They might have a criminal background. So housing navigation and placement services we're funding those with community-based organizations that are helping people get into housing. We can also use these funds to prevent people from becoming homeless by funding eviction prevention efforts and efforts to provide people safety off the streets through emergency shelter or transitional housing programs. So those are broadly the categories that the funds can be used for. Next slide. The measure is meant to end chronic homelessness in the region. So that is the goal. That is the goal that we're focused on achieving in Clackamas County through this revenue. And it's the way the measure is designed to achieve that goal is upfront at the beginning of this program. 75% of the revenue needs to be dedicated to supporting folks with long histories of homelessness, or population A in the language of the measure. So population A are people who have extremely low incomes, so they make less than 30% of the area median income. They have one or more disabling conditions, and they have a long history of homelessness. So that's what in HUD definitions would be called chronically homeless, but for the measure we're referring to it as population A. And the definition is broader and less restrictive than the HUD definition to account for how different folks in different communities experience homelessness. Not everyone experiences unsheltered street homelessness for lengthy periods of time, but may have lengthy periods of time when they do not have their own home and they're doubling up with family. But we can consider such folks, such households, to be part of population A. And then 25% of the revenue must be dedicated to supporting folks who are experiencing or are at risk of experiencing homelessness. Next slide. The local implementation plan, all 3 counties had to develop one of these before initiating the program. We began developing our plan with staff and community partners and some contracted agencies that assisted us with the outreach and community engagement work in the fall of 2020, and kind of went through the winter and into the beginning of 2021. The plan had to do a lot of things. All of the plans did, required by the measure. We had to do an assessment of need, an analysis of unmet need across various service types, an analysis of racial disparities in our housing system. We did find those in Clackamas County, as is true throughout the country. People of color are disproportionately represented among people experiencing homelessness in the United States. They are disproportionately represented among people experiencing homelessness in Clackamas County. And so we also had to articulate strategies to advance racial equity and to eliminate those disparities in our programs. And we also had to identify investment priorities for the initiation of the program. And these were developed based on extensive engagement with community partners, with stakeholders, with community organizations over a 9-month period. So there's a lot of community voice reflected in these priorities. And these 8 bullets are the investment priorities of the program for this and the coming year. And they include increasing shelter capacity. That's long been a concern of community members in Clackamas County. Clackamas County has historically lacked year-round shelter for single adults experiencing homelessness. So we're working to address that gap with this program. We also are a county that has a need for greater culturally specific services. We have not had traditionally a lot of culturally specific agencies providing services, housing services in Clackamas County. So through this program, we are expanding our relationships with community-based organizations, which are culturally specific. We're expanding wraparound services to help folks maintain housing stability. That's that kind of supportive services component that I talked about earlier. Increasing all types of outreach and housing placement services. So this is meeting people where they are, under the bridge, in the woods, in their vehicle, connecting with them, getting them assessed for their eligibility for services, and then helping them navigate to a permanent housing outcome. We're expanding existing programs that are high performing and that have a priority to serve folks that are equivalent to population A. So programs that have historically been serving chronically homeless individuals and have been doing a good job. Similarly, we're converting vouchers, so housing assistance that was time limited, so short-term rent assistance, or the Metro 300 program, which was supported by by Kaiser Permanente in the region. Several years ago, Clackamas County housed 80 households, more than 80, but our goal was 80 households of older adults with disabilities who are experiencing homelessness with a year of rent assistance. And all of those households who by this point in time would have all had their housing assistance end, because it was 1 year of rent assistance, those households are now receiving long-term rent assistance through our program with the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Program. We're also increasing internal capacity at the county to administer this significant increase in our resources to address these issues. As I said, going from administering $8 million in homeless services monies to administering $50 million in homeless services monies requires a few extra faces around the table to kind of get the work done. And we're, again, allocating funds for outreach. Outreach comes up twice here. We have historically not had a significant ability in Clackamas County to go out and meet people where they are. So we're addressing that gap through this program. Next slide. This is a timeline of kind of what we've done so far and where we're at now. As I said, July 1, the beginning of the fiscal year, was the beginning of the revenue being distributed to the 3 counties. We began in our first quarter by stabilizing programs that were that did not have ongoing funding and were at risk of closing without an investment from this revenue. That included 2 mental health stabilization housing programs operated in partnership with Community Corrections and operated by the community-based organization Bridges to Change. Serenity and Haven House, great resources in the community. Folks leaving incarceration, jail or prison with ongoing mental health needs who would be exiting jail to homelessness are served in Serenity and Haven House by their homelessness is prevented, they're stabilized in this transitional program, they're connected with behavioral mental health services, and then we work with them to transition those folks into permanent housing. So those are 2 of the programs we initially stabilized in the first quarter. We also committed supportive housing services dollars to the maintenance of a motel shelter program that was initiated under COVID since the beginning of the COVID pandemic has served 235 households with shelter with non-congregate shelter in hotel rooms contracted by the county. And that was funded through FEMA dollars, and we committed to maintain that program with the Support Housing Services funding in the first quarter. That motel shelter program is now continuing. It's being funded by a mix of FEMA dollars and American Rescue Plan Act dollars. 75 of those households have transitioned to permanent housing from that motel program to date. We issued our first procurement for new programs in August and executed those contracts, and they began delivering services in October. Those were 5 programs for housing navigation and placement and ongoing supportive services, case management for households that were placed in housing. 2 of the 5 agencies that we contracted with are culturally specific agencies. They're new to Clackamas County, so our goal of increasing the culturally specific service provision in the county is already being achieved through this first round of contracting. That's with El Programa and Greater New Hope Family Services in Multnomah County. We also are working with Northwest Family Services, Impact Northwest, and Clackamas Women's Services in these first 5 program areas. In November, we launched the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Voucher Program and began immediately connecting households with long-term rent assistance with our Housing Navigator partners. In March, we issued 6 new procurements, which I'll talk about in a second, and those will fund a large expansion of our program over the next months into the next fiscal year. We're hoping to initiate those programs in June. Next slide. So in terms of some of the work that's been accomplished so far with our partners, the 5 agencies I mentioned and the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance team at the Housing Authority, with those 5 contracts, we have the capacity to place 102 households into housing and serve 205 households with supportive services case management. So ongoing case management for those folks. 71 households have been matched with providers for housing navigation. 152 households have been connected with case management services. With the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Program, we have approved, that team in the Housing Authority has approved 151 households so far for this voucher, and 70 households of those 151 are already leased up. They're in permanent housing and they're receiving that rent assistance. The balance of that 151 are, as of the time this data was collected last week, are still looking for an apartment. So they're out with their Housing Navigator case manager partner looking for an apartment to lease up. Next slide. the procurements that we issued in March, this says that they're open. They just closed this week. So we just kind of closed our procurement on Monday. We've got a whole pile of great applications that we'll be scoring over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll be announcing awards at the end of April. But the 6 procurements that we issued and are now closed are for these areas. We had the Veterans Village, a very successful transitional shelter community. That procurement, that was a pilot program. The Board of County Commissioners made that permanent, and so we needed to procure for the ongoing services for that program. We wanted to continue to fund, provide ongoing funding to our partners that provide emergency shelter in the county, and to present an opportunity for new partners to propose programs to provide shelter and safety off the streets. Outreach, so that's a very significant investment priority for this program. So we are hoping to bring in a lot of new partners to do street outreach and to connect with folks experiencing homelessness out in the community. We have an existing very successful diversion program in partnership with the Sheriff's Department, with the Clackamas County District Attorney's Office, and with several of the municipal police departments in Clackamas County that diverts people experiencing homelessness from arrest or incarceration for low-level crimes associated with poverty and with homelessness, like trespassing for folks who are camping in a private property, or possession of a controlled substance and this kind of thing. And they're offered an option. We can do what we normally do, arrest you and book you and go through the system, or alternatively, we can divert you to a connection with a caseworker. Currently, these services are provided by Central City Concern. And if you meet with that caseworker, this arrest, it goes away, and you have an opportunity to work with that caseworker to address your needs and potentially get you into housing. So that has been a successful program. We are releasing a procurement to provide new resources for the expansion of that. We're also procuring for peer support services for the Housing Authority. So this is an effort to address concerns that residents have, help them connect with resources, and prevent eviction and negative housing outcomes for residents of Housing Authority properties. And then we're also procuring for more case management, supportive services case management for our regional long-term rent assistance program, as well as for a federal rent assistance program called Shelter Plus Care. So that's my presentation of what we've been up to and where we're going. A lot of great things happening, really significant advances in kind of the scope and pace of moving folks experiencing homelessness, long-term homelessness, into housing. These are not numbers that we're accustomed to. Moving hundreds of people off the streets into shelter and then into housing in a matter of months is typically something that takes years and years. So we're already in the first year of implementation, seeing real tangible change for very, very vulnerable people in our community. So it's encouraging. And I think Devin and I are both happy to take questions at this time, if that's an option in this webinar format.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you both so very much for all your hard work and your teams. I mean, it's very impressive to see everything that's been done. With this, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. You can use the Q&A feature. I know we have several elected officials online. You may want to share some of your experiences. We'll just go ahead and open this up. There is a question now, or a comment at least. Hello, big kudos to the county team for this incredibly exciting work. Can you tell us a bit more about the opportunities you see for collaboration with healthcare? I'm thinking specifically the health share pilot to dedicate Medicaid dollars for housing support for people exiting settings like jail or residential substance use treatment. I know it's complex to align across systems, but wondering if you have any thoughts about how this could coordinate with the great work you are doing to roll out, I swear I can read, to roll out the supportive housing services funds. Thank you. And that's Ruth from Kaiser Permanente. Yeah,
thanks, Ruth. Yes, we are coordinating. So that's ongoing work. I and members of my team are meeting like weekly in a couple of different contexts with the health share folks and their partners that have been identified as the, I don't speak health system. I'm sort of, sort of steeped in housing system. The benefit administrator, I think, is the term for it. So the benefit administrator has been selected for that pilot. It's a fantastic opportunity, and we are definitely eager to collaborate, and we are. So we're working on that coordination piece. I think it's a matter of, we're still in the stages of figuring out the nuts and bolts of, the health system and the CCOs are this very large, well-established system. The homeless services system is its own monster with its own processes and data challenges and data sources and so forth. So we're trying to knit these together. The other two counties are doing the same thing. And my counterparts, the supportive housing services managers in Multnomah and Washington, are also meeting. So the three of us meet together with health share folks on a regular and ongoing basis, Ruth, to do what you're talking about. But the promise is really amazing there with that health benefit that is being piloted. It's almost like the healthcare system can prescribe housing for folks experiencing homelessness who come to see their provider with their health concerns. And the doctor can say, your homelessness is making you sick and it's making your health concerns worse. So your prescription is housing, and then Medicare will pay for it. So this is kind of a dream come true for many of us in Oregon who've been looking at the promise of the Medicaid waiver. So more to come, but yeah, Ruth, we're working on it.
That's fantastic to hear. Anyway, please feel free to raise your hand. Ruth's responding. Thank you so much. Yes, for housing, a big deal. Appreciate all your partnership and hard work. So, do we have any more questions, comments? If you'd like to ask yourself, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. Definitely looking forward to getting back to some more in person, because the webinar format always makes it a little challenging, but yeah. Well, it looks like we're quiet today. With that, I guess we can say thank you. Thank you both for your time and your efforts and all that you're doing. And, if there's anything the Clackamas County Business Alliance can do to help partner with your efforts, we're more than happy to help out in any way, even if it's just a forum to have a conversation. But thank you so much. And let everyone have an extra 25 minutes in their day. So
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.
You too.